Great. Good morning. And good morning, everybody watching Japan Expert Insights podcast. Today is Wednesday. It is July the 30th, and it is early morning in Japan, 8 o'clock. For some people, it's early, not for everybody, of course. And we're very, very grateful to have our guest speaker for today, Andrew Silberman, who probably many of you already know from LinkedIn or Clubhouse. So that's when we actually met the first time, and we didn't keep exactly in touch, but recently we reconnected, and today we've got Andrew with us. And he's going to talk about creating and growing a business in Japan. This is a topic which has become more and more popular nowadays because the startups scene in Tokyo and also Fukuoka, here in Hokkaido, startups are just blooming at the moment, and people are willing to come to Japan. They're willing to set up a business, but of course, there are some challenges with this, and there are some things which we may learn from Andrew today. So, Andrew, good morning, welcome, and thank you for being with us.
Good morning, Maya, and thank you for that introduction. Yes, I would love to talk about creating and growing a business in Japan that I started over 30 years ago, so back in 1992.
Ooh.
But in preparation for today, I reflected back on what was my first exposure to Japan or Japanese, and you know what it was? The local gardener in Saratoga, California, his name was Roy. I think it was Yamaguchi, but I'm not sure of his last name. Roy would visit us and also two of my friends' houses, and we always looked forward to Roy coming to our house. I was 4 or 5 years old because he always gave us packages of Wrigley's gum. So he'd give us kids this gum. So that was him. That was one. Second was my stepfather worked for Owens Corning Fiberglass, and he had a visiting Japanese manager from Osaka would come regularly, stay at our house, and every time he came, he'd bring what I now know as omiyage, right? He would bring some
Right.
kind of gift to me. And it wasn't until maybe 25, 30 years later, I learned that our gardener did that for one important reason. He told us that when he was a little boy in Japan, immediately after the war, the American occupation forces would hand out Wrigley's gum to him, and he wanted to do the same thing to every kid that he would have on his route. And he later he was in the wedding of my friend, and that's where I learned that's what the reason he had done that. All I knew was he was another nice Japanese guy. So we always had something positive. But at the same time, I believe I set my fate on how I would go to Japan. Must have happened in graduate school. So you might think, what? Was I studying Japanese business? Far from that. I was studying international management at the Monterey Institute of International Studies, now run by Middlebury. And we had to write a business plan, 5 to 7 people. You'd spend 2 years with them working on a business plan. And I remember saying to my group, as long as the project has nothing to do with Japan, I'm interested.
Okay.
So I'm pretty sure that sealed the fates. Like, you think you're not interested in Japan? How about if I send you there for several decades?
Yeah, yes, whatever gods were in that land, they joked with you.
Exactly. And even before, and just after that time, I was teaching some business courses in San Diego, where I'm talking to you from right now, San Diego State and UC San Diego. And I was teaching a course in marketing, and I had written on the board a famous sentence from Peter Drucker, right? Grandfather of management. It said, the aim of marketing is to make selling superfluous. So the aim of marketing is to make selling super. So I write this on the board, and there's like 20 students in my class, 3 or 4 from Japan. I'll get to the one key one in a moment.
Okay.
But the first, Beat, there was a guy named Beat. He was a Swiss guy. He raised his hand. He says, that's ridiculous. He says, in business, sales is the most important thing. How can you say it's going to be superfluous? That's foolish. And before he finishes his comment, Mohammed from Saudi Arabia raised his hand. He says, Bea, didn't you read the homework? That's from Peter Drucker. He's the most important, famous speaker on management. If he says this, there's something in there. Didn't you do the homework? So I'm looking around the room, and like I said, there's about 20 people, all different nationalities. But one guy, Takeshi, was working for a company called C. Ito. Now, C. Ito is what today we know him as Itochu. So they were
Oh,
a huge trading company, right? He was working in marketing for them. So I say to Takeshi, Takeshi, what do you think about this? And he looked at Bayat and he looked at Muhammad and he
right.
looked back at me and he said, it's difficult. I said, yes, I know it's difficult. That's why this is a great discussion. There's all this energy in the room. I say, what's your opinion on that? He says, opinion? You want my opinion on? I said, yes. He says, I have no opinion about this. and and I remember coming back. Now, by the way, this is when Japan, the reason why 2 years prior in San Diego, why I thought I wasn't interested in Japan, because Japan was taking over. There was a book called Japan is Number One, and they were
Mm,
buying Pebble Beach Golf Course, which is right in Monterey. And Sony, we were taught that Sony, Sony, was really an acronym that stood for Soon Owns New York. And they told us that's what this is. So I'm super
okay.
fascinated. I want to know what Takeshi thinks about
Mm.
this marketing and how important it is. And by the way, this is before smartphones. So what I really hoped was somebody's going to raise their hand and say, Professor, what does superfluous mean?
Well,
Because it would have
maybe
been
if I had been in that room, I would have been that person probably.
perfect. Exactly. I would have
Yeah,
loved to have you in that classroom. And by the
right.
way, this was my only foray or first foray into academia at all. So I wasn't interested in doing academics. I wanted to get into business and start my business and that's what propelled me to Japan. I told a
Mhm.
friend of mine whose wife was half Japanese, her father was a key business person in one of the other big trading companies, and then went on to be an executive at like General Electric and all this stuff. So I he said to me, he said, Andy, you better go over to that country and figure out what's going on over there. Because why are they doing so well? How are they taking over when somebody in marketing has no opinion about this? So I remember, and I said this for 30 years, I used to say, because people always ask you, I'm sure Maya, they've asked you so many times, why did you come to Japan? How did you come to Japan? That was my true story. And I would always end it by saying, as soon as I figure out what's going on in this country, then I'll go home. And I never quite figured it out. Now, I still haven't totally figured it out. I am stationed more here. I still go back and forth regularly. I've
Mhm.
been to Japan 3 times in the last 5 months, but so I love it. I still absolutely love it. But trying to figure out the Japanese mindset or Japan Inc. or all of this kind of mysterious thing, the language, the three alphabets, the culture, all of that became forever fascinating. And that would be so probably my first real tip. Anybody thinking about going to Japan, if you're in Japan, you can use this tip. I wish I had this tip back in 1992 and then in 94, when we literally started the company, the Kabushiki Gaisha, which I can get into if you have questions about that, I'm sure you do. But it wasn't until about 1996 when I heard about a guy named Tony Robbins. I'm sure you've heard of
Oh,
him, the expert
yeah.
guru. He's not our guru. He did that video. I'm not your guru. All you hear is guru, guru.
Yeah.
He knows that trick. But what he told us in one of his workshops or his books, he says it all the time. He recommended change the word whenever you feel frustrated. He said, just change the word to fascinated. So this
Okay.
is fascinating. And he said, especially if you're really pissed and you want to use another F word, you might want to say, I'm so frustrated. He said, just change it to
Yes.
fascinated. And if you can get
Yeah.
fascinated, then you're curious and then you're open and then you might be able to find that way. And so
Right.
and I wish I knew it when I started because it would have saved a lot of extra
Yeah.
unnecessary frustration. But that was my origin story. A friend said, you got to go over there, find out what's happening over there. Fortunately, I had two friends from graduate school. Four of us in total had studied at the same program. Two of them were already in Japan. So they were working for a company that sounds great. I know I mentioned this to you the other day, the Princeton Review of Japan. It sounds very academic
Wow.
and
Yeah.
very, yeah. Well, what they were was a franchise of a test prep company. So they were helping people prepare for GMAT, TOEFL,
Mm,
SAT, LSAT, these graduate tests
right.
mostly. And they had a little side business that they were starting up. They wanted us to head, which was creating some courses, business courses, because at this time there was no Temple University Japan. There was no English MBAs from Waseda or Hitotsubashi or Keio, none of that kind of program.
Hmm.
So they wanted us to start that, which we did. But within 3 months, the company said, we're having cash flow difficulties. In fact, it was after 2 months. They paid us a salary the first month and our housing the first month. But the second month, the pay was a little delayed. And the third month, it didn't come at all. And the
Oh,
fourth
wow.
month, it didn't come at all. So four of us said, well, we got to figure this out. So we took off and went to Niseko, or to Nico, not Niseko,
Oh, Nico. Yeah.
Nico. Beautiful, right? Beautiful place. We're going to figure out what we're going to do with our lives. Are we going to stay with this company? What can we do? We love our job. We like the people, but we got to earn some money. I mean, they were paying for our housing, luckily, but they weren't paying any salary then. So we decided together we're going to go back. We're going to have a meeting with the president, and we're going to tell him, look, we love it working here. We love working for you, but until we get paid, we can't come back to work. This was right after Oshogatsu, right after New Year's,
Mm, right.
and so we said that's just this is how it's going to have to be. Well, the president looked at us, and by the way, he was 25 at the time. We were all
Oh,
27.
wow.
Yeah, he
That's
was a young guy. His father had bought him this franchise. Like I said, it sounds like this wonderful big company. It wasn't. It was a franchise of the test prep company. But his quote was, I still remember it because our fourth man in the program in the management team had gone to Akihabara that day and gotten a digital recorder, tiny little digital recorder, recording the president saying, "If you guys don't come back, you're being disloyal, and I'm not going to pay you the money that I owe you." And having that
that's
ammunition.
ridiculous. Yeah.
Right. Well, so we got a labor lawyer and we told them our situation, and it took 2 or 3 months, but we did get all but 10% fee that we had to pay them to get our money back. And with that money, we launched our own company, which meant buying a fax machine, using the
Right.
futon closet to set up, and holding some. Had already created a couple of courses, and then I started counseling the MBA candidates, so helping them with their essays, their interviews, to prepare for
Mm,
business school, which was a fascinating, growing business at that time. I had already taught some of those people in San Diego, so I knew what they were headed for. And at one point we grew to about 100 students a year that we were working with 6, 7 different trainers. So the business grew to over 100 million yen in
right.
revenues, and we were doing
Mm,
really well. And at the same time, though, people said, well, did you learn Japanese? No. Did you, what else? No, we were struggling for survival. I coached tennis for a little bit. I taught Spanish for a little bit. And those
right.
things, now, though,
Mm,
it's probably still this way, I would imagine, for scrapping young people who want to try something new. Japan is
yeah.
still wide open for that. I mean, the opportunities, especially for foreigners. People ask me all the time, well, as a foreigner, how could you do that? Isn't it much harder than in your own country? And it's really not. It's the same. It's the same or easier, just because you already stand out, right? And
Yeah.
there's nothing you can do about that. So, but take advantage of it. And there's no way. The reason that American Tennis School hired me to coach tennis was because I was American and I was the only American that was going
Right.
to be
Yeah.
coaching tennis at the American Tennis School.
Yeah, it's
So
interesting what you say because I have always told my friends who come here from the Western globe mostly that there are so many opportunities for foreigners here. And if you look carefully, you find one that really fits you, let's say what you want
absolutely.
to do and so on. And I think it's because when you're local, and it is the same for me, if I were back home in Bulgaria, it would be probably more difficult to find an opportunity that works for me right away, right? And
Mhm.
here, when you come from outside and you have this bird eyes view over the system and the
Yeah.
society, and you can easily spot some gaps, and gaps means opportunities as well. And that's why I always tell my friends, if you come to Japan, if you want to stay in Japan, you can stay first for maybe a month, 6 months, a year, and then look carefully. You always find something that will, where you can contribute, right? And that may be your lifetime opportunity. And still, I have seen some of them, just they didn't find those opportunities, but I believe that those people did not look out of their bubble. Because
Mm.
let's be honest, that sometimes foreigners, not only in Japan, if you live in your bubble, in your non-native country, sometimes you just don't look out, right?
Mhm.
You're comfortable, you communicate with your friends there, but it's difficult to actually look out the window and find an opportunity that might work for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I would add that the thing is in our case, so we knew after 2 years, or even before that, yeah, when we set up in the futon closet, we did create a name. So Advanced Management Training Group, we've come up with this name, a slogan, developing global thinkers. That's our purpose, and then for about 2 years or so, that's what we ran on. That's what we had. Then when
Mm-hmm.
we finally got our office, we sat down and said, look, here's the important thing. And I'd say here's tip number 2. So tip number 1 was get the frustration, change it to fascination, right? But then if you're actually going to start a company, and the thing is, I use this today with clients here in San Diego. I use it with clients overseas. I use it with teams that don't have this yet. I use it with startups. And that is decide that first thing, the purpose, right? The
Mm-hmm.
developing global thinkers was for us, but we didn't. So we had our purpose, we had our why, but we didn't have our values. So we had what you could call the mission, but we didn't have like, well, what do we really believe in? What do we care about? Why are we doing, not just why are we doing it, right? It is more like, it's like, why are we doing this? And it was really because we wanted to continue growing ourselves professionally. And there, as I said, there were no graduate programs in business
Mm-hmm.
in English. There were no ongoing continuation courses. We thought, well, if we, that's what one of the things Peter Drucker said is, hey, if you want to learn something, teach it.
Teach it, exactly.
So if you really want to learn, and that classic old thing, old saw, I guess we used to use as a phrase, that old saw that, oh, if you, those who can't do, teach. I say that's BS, because those who can't do will fail. Those who
Right.
can really do it and explain it, they can teach it. And try, you think you know something until you stand in front of a group that's going to raise their hand and ask you questions and challenge you. I still remember doing the first finance course that my partner, the guy who had the secret recorder, had. He had created a finance course, and he was going to have me deliver it once.
Mm-hmm.
And so I delivered the course, and I've got these Japanese and Germans in the class. There's like 6 of them, and along with my colleague who's in the back looking at me. And they asked some question, very complicated question about depreciation, certain
Oh,
assets.
yeah.
And
Mm.
I looked back at my colleague thinking I'm just going to ask him, and I catch his eyes and he looks at me like this. He's like, run, just run. That was his suggestion, was just run away. He doesn't have the answer for them either. So, that's, so here's probably tip number 3. Whatever you're aiming to do, you got to be ready to do it poorly first.
Yeah.
Like, right? I mean, you're not gonna. I played in a band I still play in the band 20 years now. We have 2 albums out, but if we had a recording of our very first gig, and our first
Right.
practices, or even a recent practice, occasionally something you're trying new, you got to be ready to just, okay, this is. I remember learning somewhere that walking is really falling. Like what you're
Yeah.
doing is falling and catching yourself each step. And I felt that so regularly from the creation. So the creation of the company was tough, right? We're going to create this thing. What are we doing? How are we going to do it? We got it. And then how do we get customers, which I'm sure that comes up. Of course, that's number one thing. I mean, it's easy to create a company with no customers. You got to get the customers. And I remember feeling, I was explaining it to people that as entrepreneurs, so as a true and I probably should, we can talk about different kinds of businesses and different kinds of starting and even different types of entrepreneurs, because we were more of a situation where it's like the baker or the chef deciding to make a restaurant, the baker deciding to make their own bakery, right? We were already trainers, except for the one who went on to work in finance, and he gave us a little bit of his capital, but we put in the same amounts, and then we're building a business of what we already do. That's very different from the entrepreneur who says, I've got an idea for some business. Maybe Maya can give us some capital,
Yeah.
borrow this money, get that money, and now we're going to go make it work. And then I got to pay back the investors. And of course, we sought investors, but there was no way to get them. Why were they going to invest in a
Yeah,
400
indeed.
an
And
acre?
back then, I think that it was really expensive to set up a business because you needed something like the equivalent of $100,000,
Yes,
right?
yes,
So that was the paid in capital,
yes. And then
right?
you're absolutely right. That didn't change until years later, maybe 10,
Mm.
15 years later, they changed it. But then you find out, and one of our founders had lived in Brazil, and there's this expression in Brazil, which definitely doesn't always work in Japan or anywhere else, but it's called jeito. And it basically means there's a way. You'll find a way. There is a way.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Okay.
If there is a will, there is a way.
Kind of that, but
Kind of.
almost if you don't care about the actual rules, or you
I
find a
see.
way with
Okay.
the
All
rules.
right.
And
So
so
you're
what?
looking for back doors.
Yes, and we found one even back then, which it took a while, but we learned from people that, oh, well, actually, as long as you can, if you can show that you are solvent enough and you can countersign and do all this stuff, you can borrow money from the bank. You can take that money, which we learned in business school, that's called debt, but you could register that with your accountant and call it equity. you, you you could call it
That's yes.
equity. And it was like, and then, okay, even for one day, as long as it's in the bank account as registered as that, now you, and okay, yes, you owe the money, but you've registered it as actual capital. So
Right.
that, and we did that for about 2.5 million yen. And so it was March, I believe. We said, wow, March 1994. We have 8 months to get another 7.5 million yen. And so what did we do? Every single yen that a client paid us was registered as capital. Registered as
Right.
it's like,
Yes, because there is a way, indeed.
yes, yes.
And
So go
yeah.
ahead.
No, I wanted to say that at the end of the day, some people don't believe in the utility of going to business school, right? Especially
Mm,
if you have one degree already somewhere under
yeah.
your belt. But I believe that there are quite a lot of things that you learn there,
Mm.
and they are quite helpful.
I,
So,
and in our case, it's really funny. I was just talking with 2 other fellow graduates from that same program last week, or a few days ago, Monday, actually. So that is this. We did a lot of group work in our international MBA program, a lot of group work. And we had in 70 students, there were 70 students in our class, there were 30 countries represented. So it was very international and a lot of groups. But even then, nobody really taught us how to work in a functional group, a functional team. So we wound up we were thinking when we set up this company, oh, we're going to teach business courses because that's what we want to learn more. We're going to teach those. Oh, there's these people. But then we learn, oh, there's these people that need to get into graduate school. Okay, we can help them. I didn't know that was a whole business line. And then you find out, oh, wait a minute. These people in business, they don't, as the time went on, they could take courses. They could get an MBA.
Right.
So, but they weren't being taught how to deliver effective presentations,
Right. Yes.
or how to work remotely, or be creative.
Yes.
All these things. They hadn't done
Indeed.
that, or work effectively in a team. So even though we did it, and so we had experienced it, and really experienced it in a bad way, I could say that. I mean, we learned there were a lot of dysfunctional teams in business school, and even at starting out, I mean, there was a lot of problems when we were starting our own company, coming up with these values, which that was that second thing I was about to, I didn't get to, I sidetracked myself on that. But that second thing is coming up with the values. So we knew we wanted to have a company where we could continue to grow, we could continue to develop ourselves. So even our phrase, it sounds like, well, who are these guys developing global thinkers? What, they're the people who really know already? And it was, no, we're in the middle of developing ourselves as global thinkers.
Right.
That was the
I
idea.
think, yes, something that many people do not understand is actually you're never ready, right? You're
No.
never perfectly ready. So some people say, okay, so I'll do this and I'll do that. I'll take this course, and maybe after I finish the course, then I'll set up a business because I'll know more. And it turns out that while courses do help and you learn a lot through them, the best way to learn is through practice. So it's better not to wait, right?
Absolutely. And
You
it's
learn, yes, while
I
you
love that you,
practice.
yes, I love that you use the word ready, because all those QuickBooks that are my marketing ploy, but they're all called GRIP, which is
Hmm.
Global Readiness Improvement Plan. So it's readiness improvement. We can get
Right.
readier, right? But
Readier, yes,
you're
but not
never,
perfectly
no,
ready.
you're definitely, I mean, there's no way. I mean, and so we sat down, five of us co-founders, and said, okay, what are our values? What's really important to us? And we came up, important to us, and what we felt was going to be important to make the business grow. So back then we were looking at it as a combination. Okay, is this really important to you, and how is this going to help the company? And the first thing we came up with was listening. We knew we had to be good listeners. So even though it doesn't sound like that today, that I'm not, but you asked me to be the speaker, so I'm
Yes,
speaking
yes, of
more.
course.
But really, we do focus on listening. And then,
Mhm.
of course, we have encouraging and empowering and creativity. That's where we came up. Eventually I wrote a book on that. And then balance. So we really sought for those five things. And we said, okay, this is what we're all about. And can we help you? Now, at the beginning, like I said, I mean, getting clients is the number one. People think, well, you got to get capital, or you got to have your business plan. And I agree, especially if you have a group of people working on the business plan. I learned this in business school, that planning is hugely important. Not the plan itself
Right.
necessarily, but planning, the project, the doing it together, deciding who's our market, how are we going to grow, what are we going to do, all of that stuff, super important. But you can have all the best plans, you can have the great capital, but the capital is just going to run out if you're not selling your
Indeed.
product or your service. So I still remember a guy from Fuji Xerox. We had him on our early board. And he said, well, how do you guys, he worked for Fuji Xerox. He says, we sell copiers, we lease copiers and the toner and the paper, and that's how we make our money. It seems to me that all you guys have is air.
Well,
you're
that's
just
the
selling, you're just selling
that,
conversations. How do you even get a customer? And I still remember my answer, which kind of shocked my partners at the time. But I said, oh, it's pretty simple. I think his name was Ihara, or one of these guys. I said, we get them three ways: beg, borrow, and steal. That's how we get customers.
yeah, but it's true. I mean, like when you sell services, when you sell consulting, it's just air.
Yeah.
If we, yes, you sell conversations, but you also sell know-how.
Yeah.
And I have noticed that very few people understand that know-how is not easily available out there.
Mm,
Of
mm,
course, you can go through life, you can gain experience, you can learn through attending school or once again, courses, right?
Yeah.
But that know-how that you accumulate in certain field or fields is not easily available out there. And
Right.
people say nowadays that there is a lot of information online, and still that's not exactly what you can benefit the most from,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because when you communicate with people who have experience in the field, your respective field, at the end of the day, when you converse with them and when you solve problems together and when you look towards shared goals, that's where creativity comes, and that's where you can actually find the solutions you're looking for. Because when you talk with people, with real people, you stimulate each other,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
Your thought
Yes.
process goes not just on tangents, but sometimes it goes on tangents, sometimes it goes back, sometimes it leaps forth. And
Exactly.
that's where you need that human element, which you cannot get online.
Right. 100%. 100%. And the other thing that we can do is, so depending on your approach, and my approach is a very much, I, even though, and I say this word almost hesitantly, but I think our listeners or viewers will understand the best if we say, yeah, what we do is coaching. So I was, even though we called it like essay counseling back in the day, it was more coaching. I don't necessarily like the word because everybody is a coach these days and there's these certifications to be a coach. The point of a coach is drawing out, just like a good educator would do, but
Right.
drawing out from the client, from the group, from the team, what they can do. And the interesting thing, I've had plenty of good and bad coaches in my life. I love it, especially in tennis. I had so many. And you would think, oh, who makes the best tennis coach? Well, it turns out it's not the best tennis player that makes the best coach.
Indeed.
It's the one who can actually bring out your best, can see something that you don't see, can share that different perspective, can give you a chance to try it where you're going to feel comfortable making mistakes, and then be able to ask him, well, hey, what did, how, or her, hey, how did, why did this happen? And they can point out something and help you. You know they're on your side, and you
Yeah.
can guide them into that without thinking you have the answer. Because in none of my business, all of our businesses that we work with, I can't remember if we've ever, I don't think I've coached directly another training company, for example, certainly not in management training, right? They wouldn't be our clients necessarily. But every business that we work with, they're the experts in their business. Like, I'm not going to, the major consulting firms and major accounting firms and pharmaceutical companies and banks, I'm not teaching them or coaching them in something that they don't know, but I'm helping them see, and we do it either as a team or in individuals, using a video camera when they're giving a presentation, and
Mhm.
they can see themselves and say, that guy looks kind of bored. It's like, yeah, what's happening here? Or
Right.
as one of my clients, I still remember one of my clients sharing back. He said, I shared with him his video performance, as it were, and he said, wow, he says, that guy, he's talking to you, but it's like he doesn't even need you to be in the room. He doesn't need any audience. He's just talking. He doesn't care about anybody who's listening.
Right.
It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, that's an issue, right? And so that's again, going back though, let's hit on these key points. So you got to have a purpose. You want to have your values, like what's really important to you. Why are you doing this business? People say, well, we're doing the business to make money. I still run into people who say that, and I say, yeah,
Right.
but that's like saying I'm driving a car to get gas. Like it's all about gasoline. That's what we're about.
Yes.
It's
No,
like,
I love what you're saying, right? Because of course we know that business is there to generate revenues, because without revenues business cannot sustain itself
right.
and it cannot continue. That's an important part, but at the same time, and this is what I value about Japanese businesses very much, is that they first think about contribution.
Yep.
How can they contribute to their community? How can they contribute to their society? And if they find that sweet spot that actually provides real value to the people around them, their employees, their stakeholders,
Mm.
the families of their employees, and also their clients, of course, because if you don't provide value, then you're not never going to get client. But
Right.
when you find that sweet spot, basically you know that your business is there to last
Mm-hmm.
and to stay. And once again, I have to say, I haven't taken your MBA courses or
No.
pre-MBA courses. I went to different school.
Mm.
But what I learned there, and I'm sure that modern MBA programs, they very much emphasize this point,
Mm.
is that businesses have to think about the stakeholders first,
Yeah.
right? And stakeholders means all those people who sustain themselves
Mm.
thanks to that business, right? So
Right.
this is the customers, this is the once again the employees, and this is the community around them. Of course, the shareholders are there as well.
Mm.
But the thing is that business is there to help people.
Yep. That was a big learning for me, and probably one of the first almost shocks that I got when I came to Japan was when we saw that they really flipped something like the fundamental purpose of any business. What we were taught in business school back, because this is how long ago I was. Yeah, they mentioned stakeholders along the way, but they talked about it as the purpose is to generate wealth for the owners. I'm like,
Yeah,
oh,
all owners. Okay.
right, the owners, the shareholders, whatever. But then when I got to Japan, people said the fundamental purpose of a business is creating jobs for the
Right.
people. And it's like, well, that's no wonder. No wonder we had, I mean, when I first got to Japan, there were people at every train station, two or three at every exit. They had these little clickers, and they would click your ticket to
Yes,
show that
they
you've
were.
gone
Yeah.
through the thing. And people were in a panic. What are we going to do? These guys aren't going to have a job if we have like automated gates.
Hmm.
That's going to be that was a
Right.
huge issue. So there were so many things that become endlessly fascinating or frustrating depending on your perspective as you
Yes.
try to weave through the Japanese, what do we call it,
Yeah.
maze. Yes, it's like walking through Tokyo, right? You walk, or any of these small towns, wait a minute, these addresses don't work. And I still
But
remember
yes, yeah, yeah. Okay, go ahead.
well, I remember a TED talk from many years ago, and it was saying, is this weird, or is it just different? And they were explaining how in many places in Japan that the blocks were named but not the streets. It's like
Hmm.
in the US and Europe, they name the streets and they number the blocks, but over there it's like, no,
Yes,
we're numbering the blocks or naming the block, but not even naming the street. And you're like, okay, well, it's so much that's upside down, and I
it
feel that
is. Yes,
upside down, but fascinating. And it's not like,
it is.
yeah,
Yeah, but it's interesting to me because it's upside down depending if you are in the United States and maybe if you are in Europe, it looks upside down,
yeah,
right? To
yeah,
you,
yeah.
how things are. So I remember when my friend came, friends actually, my friend with and her husband, they came to Japan about 6 or 7 years ago.
Hmm.
Japan was not that cool at that time yet. It was getting to be to getting cool
Mm.
for as a travel destination, but not that cool. And so we took them around Tokyo, and everywhere we went, of course, there were construction works
Mm.
here and there, right? Construction sites, and inevitably there were those elderly gentlemen
Right,
who were yes direct
flagman, yeah,
traffic. Yes, they were directing traffic, and the only job they did was, to raise that what's that, the red sign saying,
yep,
"Wait
yeah,
until the cars from the opposite direction pass." And
mm.
then they will, when the cars were done, they passed. Then he would, just say, "Okay, now it's your turn, go."
Yeah,
And so my friends, they were fascinated with this, and they would say, "Why do you need people here to do this?"
right,
But at the same time, you see that those guys, even though they were retired, they would get some additional income,
right,
right? And it would help them and their families
hmm,
to maintain a very nice standard of living, right?
yeah,
And so this is all about, it's not about efficiency, not
no,
so much about
no,
efficiency, but it's about effectiveness and
yeah,
maintaining that harmony, which people always wonder what exactly harmony means in Japan.
yeah, wow, I love that. Is, I mean, that is a wonderful question, because part of the harmony is this is one of many, I call them reasons. Others tell me it's my excuses for
Yes.
why it's so
Again.
hard to learn the language, because part of it is people don't want to, it's impolite to contradict you or tell you that you're wrong
Mm,
openly and tell you this, you shouldn't do that, right? So it's maintained and much smoother to just kind of say, yeah,
yeah.
so yeah,
But
what can
that's
I
why
do?
your student back then in 1994, was it?
He was 91 in San Diego. Yeah.
91 in San Diego. That's why your Japanese student said, I don't have an
Exactly.
opinion, because he had two opposing sides and he
And
didn't
the
want to
professor in the
offend
middle.
anybody.
Exactly. Yes.
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 So he preferred
Yes.
to say, I don't have an opinion, instead
Right.
of offending one of those sides,
A
right?
100%. And it was just, it was fascinating to learn. And that did take a couple of years, right? It did. I didn't get that right away, because I usually get that from the people I finally learned, because they were writing out their essays to get into business school, and how much you learn when people would say, they would use phrases like fortunately and unfortunately. I'm like, no,
Oh,
what do you mean fortunately and unfortunately? He said, well, we say this thing, koka fukoka in Japanese. And it means for. I was like, okay, I kind of get this now. I understand where you're coming from. It's just a different approach, right? It's a
right.
different perspective that you say, yeah, of course the guy wouldn't want to speak up, and then he has to take a side, and now there's going to be a conflict. And whereas we in the West was like, well, that's what we do for everything. We need to know the other
Right.
opinion. Otherwise, why are we here?
Indeed. We love debates. We love
Yes.
debates. We
Yes.
love, let's say, arguing, right?
Well,
And
you'll love this. As I still remember working early on. So this was probably in our third or fourth year, and we had someone who had done their master's degree in intercultural communication, and she's still an expert in that field. A fantastic woman. But I remember saying, okay, so this company, what they want is to learn how to debate effectively. Which, first of all, this was a common thing that they were asking for. I haven't seen it so much recently, but you wonder why. Well, because Japanese, we don't really know how to debate. And so, okay, I mean, but they aren't really wanting debate. They want
no.
persuasive communication. Probably
Yes.
they're not learning how to debate and be a politician. But what they also had to do, and I still remember this woman telling me, this trainer, she said, "Well, first we have to teach them to have an opinion."
Well, I think that she missed the very basic thing about Japanese people,
Mm,
that every single one of them has an opinion on
mm,
everything. They just don't like sharing it with people they have met a couple of times and they're not close to.
right,
So,
right.
and I know because Tim and I, we often talk about this. And if
Mm,
you have a Japanese family and if you have made Japanese friends,
mm,
you're already part of their inner circle. You're the
yeah,
in group for them. And
yeah.
once you get to that point, it's easy to see how
Mm,
opinionated everybody
mm,
is.
mm.
It's just that they don't show it. And
Yeah.
I have a friend, and so about 7 or 8 years ago, it was after the Great East earthquake, and
Mm,
so there was the time. It was the time when they were debating. The politicians were promoting the increase of the value added tax. That's the
mhm.
consumption
Yep.
tax from
Yep.
5% to 8%.
Yep.
And there was a lot of debate. And so one of my girlfriends, Japanese, of course, we talked a lot with her and we agreed. And she agreed. She said, I think we have no choice but
Mm,
to accept that,
right.
because the Japanese population is aging. We don't have any other revenue streams at that
Yeah.
point, right? And so the Great East Japan earthquake had just happened, so there was a lot of necessary. They needed a lot of budget, right, for the
Mhm.
reconstruction. So, and she was very down to earth. She said, "We have absolutely no choice but to
Mm,
go for it
mm,
and accept it, and pay that consumption tax and so on." And then she was invited by NHK to debate it, with a couple of
wow.
people on TV.
Okay. Okay.
And the funny thing is that nobody debated there. Everybody said, Well, I think that it's going to be very difficult for me and my family if we accept that increase in the consumption tax and this and that. And eventually, she didn't debate it. She said, even when she was given the final word, she said, yes, as a society, we are an aging society. And because of that, well, I think that we all have to think about each other and how we can go forward together. And so
Wow.
that was, there was no real debate. There was no real
No.
opposition,
And
right?
no economic theory going back and
No,
forth. Yeah.
no, nothing
Yeah.
like that. But
Well,
at the end of the day, she said, we have to think how we can go forward. We can
yes.
do things together, right?
Wow. Wow.
And this is such a,
Wow.
yes,
Well, you take me back. You take me back because I remember going from 0 to 3 to 5. No, 0 to 3 to 5 to 8 to 10, right? I think that's what we
hmm
did. 0, 3, 5, 8,
right,
10.
right.
Luckily, it's only at 10 for now. Uh,
Yes. No, if you just allow me to finish,
sure.
and going back to what you said,
Yeah.
that debate is not expected here, and
Right.
people are very capable of finding a way that works for everybody in Japan
Mm,
without debating.
right.
So I think that the issues and the
Yeah.
challenges for Japanese people arise when they start working overseas.
Mm.
When they start
Yes.
working with foreign
Exactly.
entities.
And to understand, I think, and there's another thing. I mean, I have such a difficult time with almost anybody making strong declarative sentences about the Japanese in almost anything, just because I've seen the counterexample of everything. So,
Yes, yeah,
so,
that's
so
true too.
but the
Yes,
thing I've definitely come across is that, yeah, it's generally hard. So they don't want, in general, not wanting to express that strong opinion, because it's also then hard once it's been expressed. It's almost like, yeah, this is what we're going to do. So if you get a consensus around everybody, nobody has said everything yet, nobody has declared it fully, but now we have it, boom, now we all can go behind that, and it's great. But once, if somebody has said they've said the opposite. And I mean, I still remember back in the day a senior group expressing their opinion, and a couple of managers I had coached, they came away from a meeting so dejected because they couldn't express their opinion, because the senior person had already expressed the opinion. It was the opposite, so they didn't want to, because they have, it's a harder time. It's not a clash of fun
no,
discussion, right? I'm sure you've
right. But I think that you're making a great point, because when we talk about Japanese people, when we talk about American people or any other nationality, we use the Japanese, we use the Americans, right? These expressions, and it sounds like we are generalizing. And of course we are. And I want to say that we are basically talking about tendencies,
yes,
because not every single person is the same as the other one, but
yeah,
there are some shared tendencies, right? There is a national character. And of course, in every country, you can find people who diverge from the general trend. And
yes,
it is very normal. And as sometimes Tim says, especially about the Japanese, what you can say about the Japanese something, and you can say the opposite thing about them
yeah,
as well,
yeah.
because everything is situational. And I think that it's true about any other nation.
Mm,
So of
mm.
course generalizing works, because we cannot talk about just one single person or two single people, right?
Right, right.
um, but at the same time we are aware that there are general trends, and there are always exceptions to the rule.
Absolutely.
So
I would add maybe trends, and preferences too.
preferences too,
Yeah,
yes, of
it's like,
course.
yes, you prefer this, but you could flex your way to do that. And that's, otherwise there would be none of this. We wouldn't have any business. You wouldn't have any
Yeah,
business doing cultural training, or because and I would just want to add that we want to give them skills. Anybody, and when I say them, I mean my clients, and my clients are
right.
foreigners and Japanese. And
Mhm.
it's just that most people that I work with are not in their natural comfort zone. So what I mean by that is most of the Japanese I work with are working in a foreign company or a
Mhm.
foreign environment, sometimes where there's even more than 80% are foreigners, right?
Right. Yeah.
And then and then the Americans I'm working with, or Western Europeans or other Asians, almost none of them are in their home country at all. They're either in Japan or they're overseas in Asia when I've been delivering workshops there. So it's no one is in their natural home comfort zone. And I try to use that as an advantage because that means we're open to differences, right? I'm not
Yes.
working with Japanese who
Mhm.
have been straight up through the Ministry of whatever, the Todai and then Ministry of Fire and then the top, and they've never come across foreigners very much. It's like that's just a different type of person. We're working with people that are open to new opportunities, open to learning, right?
Yeah.
Wanting, and then
Yes.
and so let me just add. I'll say the third thing because I know we're going to run out of time. But the three main points. So you have your purpose, you got your values, right? And then of course you want a vision, like something that you're
Mm.
heading toward. And that was always one of the hardest things for me to do there because my vision was survival at first.
All right.
Like, how do you make
Mhm.
sure you're going to be able to pay the rent, and how are you going to get this? But then eventually became okay. We want to be your learning partner. So we want to be the partner in learning and development. We're able to say that as a company, and I've been able to do that over here too, which is great. I mean, it means that these are some kind of universal things, that universal need for knowledge and learning and growing and challenging. But most of what I learned in my whole professional career was over there in Japan. 90% of the time I was in Japan. The creativity stuff I learned was like from Qigong of all things, from the
Right.
Qigong master in
Mhm.
Nakano who first taught me how Qigong works and is throwing people across the room and looked like a kind of a show, like an acting in a movie, but it was real because people were literally being hurled across a room. So and all of the introspection and all of the reflection, all the things people say that are so great about Japan, I think it truly is, and those things are unique to Japan. I never felt um, more self-reflective as
All
there, right?
right. Yeah.
More like wow, and you seem to have more time to do that because you're traveling on public transportation. You're not having to drive. You're in with people, and then that whole fascinating, frustrating thing comes back. Everybody could say, "Well, gosh, it's super convenient in Japan, but it's just so crowded. It's just horrible."
Right.
Or you
Yeah.
say, well, it's really crowded, but it's super convenient. It's like, which way are you going to look at this?
Hmm.
and,
Indeed. Yeah.
and
Well, yeah, it is. I mean, everything has two sides, and depending on how you choose to look at them, uh, you can either succeed or fail.
yeah,
And well, I have learned that every crisis, every mistake is basically a way to learn and step up and
you
go
would
forward.
love you would love chapter whatever it is in here. I can't remember which chapter, but it's failure equals success. It's one of the hardest things I had to try to help people learn.
Yeah,
Chapter 10, and
that's
again,
the switch in the
yeah,
mindset. Oh yes, yes,
yeah,
indeed.
chapter 10. I
Right.
mean, failure equals success. And luckily, now eight out of 10 of the clients that I work with get that by the time they read it. But 2 out of 10 are like, "What are you talking about?" Like
Yeah.
the first Japanese candidate I worked with in getting into business school, one of the first during the first year,
Hmm.
there was a question on the Harvard MBA application that said, "Please describe a failure and tell us what you learned from it." And he
Yeah.
looked at me and he said, "Andrew, if I had failed by this point in anything, I wouldn't be here applying for business school."
Right.
Like, what?
Yes.
So he had no concept of
Right. Yeah.
failing. Okay. So,
Right, that's true. Now, Andrew, please allow me to read the comments we got this
oh,
morning.
great. Yeah.
So we've got Timothy Langley commenting, wonderful to see Andrew, Mr. Energy. Wow, you get the
Hi,
best
Tim.
people on your show. Yes. Andrew, in particular, is an icon. Get to see you, Andrew. Great to see you, Andrew. This is from Timothy. And we have Tommy Tubots. Local universities are setting up innovation centers to encourage local collaboration with local industries.
Wow.
Will they actually help local communities, or is it just top down, grant driven PR. So, Tommy, thank you very much for your question. And I wonder whether you're talking about Japanese universities or American universities. If you're still watching us, please let us know. But I think that in Japan, because of the mindset, if it is in Japan, inevitably it will benefit the local communities. And I have to say also, because if it is in Japan, and because it is in Japan, that benefit for the local communities will not be immediate. It will take time. It will take maybe twice as much time as it would be in any other place of the world, because
That
we all
now
know.
that's a generalization that is so accurate. You might as well frame it because everything takes way more time. I don't know.
Yes,
I still remember going in to visit Coca-Cola as a potential client, and they said, "Oh, we love everything that you say you do. This is fantastic. Come see us next year."
exactly.
Oh, why next year?
Yes,
Well, first of all, we want to see if you're still here. I mean,
yes.
I wanted to say, well, if you become a client, we're more likely to be here.
Yeah, but I also believe there was another reason. They didn't have budgeted,
Exactly. You're
for
so
that
right.
fiscal year, right? They had
You're
to just get some budget for the next year as well. So it
absolutely.
served at least two
I
purposes.
love that. And so that's the other thing that I wish and this serves us so well in everything and everywhere, but just really, yeah, seeing there could be another reason for whatever there, and let's assume the positive reason, because the negative
Yes,
one
yeah,
is it's gonna hurt.
always.
Yeah, I
Yes.
love that. Thank you for reminding me. I'm sure that
Oh,
is
no, you're very welcome. Let me continue with the comments if you
sure.
don't mind. Okay, and so we've got Frederick Gunlach. He says in American business schools, the focus used to be on financializing everything.
Yeah.
This is 1980s. Stakeholders were like extras in a movie.
Mm.
I think they still are, unfortunately,
Yeah.
in the
And
United
you're
States.
right. And the whole they even called it, yeah, financialization of
Yes,
everything. And that's we're in the middle of that. That's what we're
right.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And
Great
then
comment.
Frederick continues in Japan, if you kick your employees out of work, it's not like you can just drive off to your gated community. There is a social cost that is very apparent here. And it truly is. It's very apparent. And that social cost is quite high, actually.
Agreed.
So, and then we've got, okay, Frederick continues. Bingo, Japanese have a lot of opinions. Okay, thank you for the affirmation, Frederick. They aren't spouting them out like a faucet. Yes, we love, yes,
Perfect. Yes.
we Westerners love
Yes.
to share
Yeah.
our opinions. That's
Starting
so
out like
very
a
true.
process. That is a good line,
Oh,
Frederick.
yes. Okay. And Tommy says, yes, in Japan. He's talking about universities in Japan. And I think, so I'll read the comment once again. Okay, just give me a second to go back to it. Yes, local universities are setting up innovation centers to encourage local collaboration with local industry. Will they actually help local communities, or is it just top-down grant-driven PR? So, yes, I think that if you don't mind me talking, because I'm in Japan, and Andrew, please share your opinion, of course, as well. But I think that in the beginning it started because of the need. The ruling parties, they understand the need of vitalizing local communities here in Japan, and of course part of that is actually pouring funds into local universities and seeing how they can help, and that's of course the innovation centers. And I have no how can I put it? No doubt that some of those funds will not, or they will be wasted. Okay, some of those funds will be wasted, but part of them will actually go into real work.
And
And
I
yes, go ahead.
partnering with the universities, I hope that's partnering with giving the students opportunities to be doing actual research and
Right.
involvement with those local communities, whether it's the businesses or the government offices, because that's one thing I've seen in the last decade or so, maybe even two, 1.5, is the young people really are getting the energy back again.
Right.
It's just that would be something I would love to see.
Yeah, one challenge I would love to see that too, but one challenge I see is basically changing the, let's say, the mindset, maybe the system as well, because a lot of the research centers that are attached to universities in Japan, they are very innovative. They come up with a lot of innovations, but very few of those innovations are patented,
Mm,
and very few of them go into work and
mm,
they are adopted by the industry. And
mm.
I think that there is a disconnect there, and connecting these two, the innovations and patenting them and getting the industry use some of them is the real challenge.
Mm, great.
Still, it is the real
Super.
challenge in
Yeah.
Japan.
So
Hopefully they
go
will
for it.
overcome it.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
So, Tommy, I hope that this was somewhat helpful and answered your question. If you don't agree, tell me. If you agree, tell us. Oh,
Exactly.
in any event, thank you very much for watching. And Andrew, it's 9 o'clock, 1 minute
Oh,
past nine
wow.
o'clock.
Wow, that was a quick hour.
It was a quick hour. Thank you so very much for sharing all your insights. And I'm definitely looking forward to continuing this conversation with you. So let's make it happen. And
Okay.
to everybody who watched us and who will watch us from now on, let us know that you did.
Mm,
Hit like or follow or subscribe depending on which platform you're watching us on. Leave your comment, leave your thoughts, their questions, so that we can address them next time.
that
And
would be great.
help us spread the word if you think that there's some, even just a bit small seeds of wisdom in our podcast. So thank you very much, Andrew, and
Thank you.
everybody else. Thanks.
You.
All right, and have a great midweek, and we'll see you next time.
Absolutely.